There comes a point when even the kindest heart closes its doors, not from bitterness but from clarity. For the INFJ, this moment doesn't arrive like a thunderclap. It comes quietly, after months, sometimes years, of feeling everything too deeply, of absorbing the moods of others like a sponge, of trying to keep the peace at the cost of your own. You wake up one day and realize you're exhausted, not just tired, but soul-weary. The people who stayed close only when they needed your insight, your presence, your healing, they begin to drift away. And instead of chasing them, you feel relief. You finally understand those who vanish when your light is dim weren't warmed by your flame. They were just using the heat. This is when the masks fall. The ones others wore to manipulate, but also the ones you wore to survive. INFJs have spent a lifetime softening their edges, offering translations of themselves to be more palatable, digestible, agreeable, but no more. Because explaining yourself too much doesn't bring connection. It brings dependency. It teaches others that your peace is negotiable, that they have a vote in your identity, and that, right there, is the first thread in the unraveling of your freedom. 2. The power of the unexplained. Machiavelli believed power lies in the unpredictable, not in cruelty but in mystery. He said the prince who is seen too often becomes ordinary. Jung, on the other hand, spoke of individuation, the quiet transformation where a person stops living to be understood and starts living to be whole. When an INFJ stops explaining, something radical happens. They reclaim their narrative. They rewrite the silent contract that used to say, "I'll give you my energy, time, and emotional labor in exchange for approval." That contract is void now, and in the silence that follows, something sacred is born. You learn to say, "I don't need you to understand. I need to feel whole. I'm not missing. I'm realigning. It's not that I don't care anymore. It's that I've started caring about myself." And yes, they will say you changed, that you're colder, arrogant, selfish. But listen closely. They're not describing you. They're mourning the loss of control they once had over your sensitivity. What they called kindness was really access. What they praised as generosity was really your inability to say no. Now that you have boundaries, you feel distant to them, not because you moved away, but because they were never truly close. 3. The sacred silence. INFJs live much of their lives in translation, feeling too much, seeing too deeply, and constantly editing themselves so the world doesn't feel threatened by their intensity. But at some point the cost becomes too high. You begin to see how your endless explaining invites endless questioning, how your availability makes people devalue your time, how your emotional generosity turns invisible, expected. That's when the silence starts, not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. You pull back, not to punish, but to preserve. You become slow to respond, selective with your presence. And suddenly the people who once flooded your messages vanish, because they can't extract what you no longer give freely. Carl Jung would call this individuation, the moment when a person stops living as a reflection of others and steps into their own center. A return to self, a reclamation of soul. And Machiavelli would smile too. Because the INFJ who disappears, who reappears only when it matters, they become unforgettable. Not because they're loud, but because their absence weighs more than most people's constant presence. You become someone others can no longer read so easily. And that unpredictability, that sovereignty, that is power. 4. The quiet sovereignty of the whole self. INFJs don't become unreachable because they feel superior. They become unreachable because they're done being dragged into emotional chaos. They've spent years crawling through other people's wounds, trying to make sense of them, trying to heal what they didn't break. But now they rise. And those who can't meet them up there, they stay below. What scares the manipulator isn't the fight, it's the withdrawal. It's not the argument, it's the calm refusal. They can't play the game if you don't show up. That's the INFJ's evolution, from savior to sovereign, from translator to creator. They no longer give energy just because someone asks. They evaluate. They weigh the emotional cost. They ask, will this feed my soul or fracture it? And if the answer isn't clear, they choose themselves. You might call them distant. But really, they're deliberate. Because nothing is more exhausting than being endlessly accessible, and nothing is more sacred than a presence that chooses where to bloom. 5. The final mirror. So what happens when the INFJ stops apologizing for being misunderstood? They become whole. Not loud, not flashy, just whole. You won't see them arguing online. You won't hear them defending their choices at family dinners. Because they've realized something revolutionary. Their peace is not a group project. They don't owe anyone a performance of happiness. They don't need applause to feel worthy. They don't trade authenticity for approval anymore. The INFJ you once knew may have bent over backward to be liked, but the INFJ who walks forward now, they bend for no one. Because they know who they are. And they are done explaining it. And maybe, just maybe, you recognize yourself in these words. Maybe you've been disappearing too. Not out of bitterness, but out of rebirth. Maybe you're becoming someone new. Someone still soft, still deep, but no longer available on demand. No longer giving pieces of yourself to people who haven't earned them. If you feel that shift, that sacred boundary rising quietly inside you, then say it aloud or write it down. My peace needs no explanation. Hold that like a shield, like an amulet, because every time you explain yourself just to be accepted, you abandon a piece of your own truth. And this world doesn't need more explanations. It needs more people who have made peace with being misunderstood. Let the world call it cold. You call it clear. Let them call it ego. You call it embodiment. Let them say you've changed. You say, finally. And if you made it this far, you didn't just read a script. You crossed a threshold. Between the self you edited to survive and the self you're now choosing to protect. In the quiet of one of my longest nights when I too felt the ache of giving too much, I wrote this. Not to teach, but to remind myself and you. You are not lost. You are locating your center. You are not broken. You are done bending. And if you're done with just surviving, if you're ready for more than words, for something that actually guides you through the storm and helps you rebuild from the damn roots, I created something real. Not a book of fluffy quotes. Not another motivational high that fades in a week, but a manual for transformation, raw, grounded, and built on real psychology, soul truth, and the kind of introspection most people avoid. Because if you're sick of being stuck in your own mind, if the voice in your head has been your biggest enemy, if you're ready to stop looping in fear and start taking control, this is for you. My book, Get Out of Your Head, Be in Control of Your Life, is available now on Amazon. Paperback, Kindle, audiobook. Whichever way you take it in, it is designed to cut through the noise and help you reclaim your mind. It will walk you through how to dismantle fear, silence that inner critic, and finally start showing up in your life like the version of you that has been buried for too long. So if your soul is tired of pretending, tired of shrinking, tired of managing chaos just to get through the day, click the link in the description and start reading. This isn't for everyone. But if anything I said today hit you in that deep place that most people never touch, this might be for you. Go check it out. You'll know if it's time. Either way, thank you for walking with me, for holding this silence, for becoming, slowly and quietly, whole.